Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you, Lee. My question for the candidates is, what would they like to see happen in that field across from the cemetery in Moscow, out there on Troy Road and Mountain View?
All right, that will go to Walter Steed first.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the question. I used to live across from that field up until April. And my neighbors, when it was first rumored that something was going on with it back in the mid-2000s, came to me and said, an industrial park. But if it's a Target, we would love it. Personally, I would like to have seen a Walmart there, but only if they brought a gas station with them and cheap gas prices for Moscow. I thought that would have been really neat. I never did really understand Walmart's interest on the east side of Moscow, but they are big enough to make their own decisions regarding where they build and what markets they use. And personally, I was disappointed that the city council at that time, created enough barriers to them that they pulled out and went and built their superstore over in Pullman. The good news is that we managed to get them back and reopen a renovated store in Moscow.
And that was Walter Steed, and now Rebecca Rod.
Well, I lived near that field. I guess I wasn't excited about the idea of a Walmart out there. And really, when you think about it, as far as, traffic and stuff like that, it makes more sense to put big box stores kind of near between us and Pullman or something than kind of over on the east end. I think what I would envision out there, I know something I'll go in there someday, is perhaps like a retirement community, maybe with a small mall where folks can, get their hair cut or shop for something, or maybe have a wellness clinic, or, kind of a more mixed use idea. Perhaps if we started to attract retirees to the area or something, that might be a neat place to set up something like that, and maybe add some other kind of housing behind it. But I guess I'd like to see something a little more mixed with residential and perhaps some retail and such. Thank you.
That was Rebecca Rod, 892-9200. Let's try line 2 and see if nobody is there. All right. So I have a question. We'll start with Rebecca Rod on this, and this is somewhat related, I think. The big box store ordinance has been cut back quite a bit in the last couple of years. Educate us on the requirements and if you think further changes are necessary.
I actually am not that familiar with the certain dimensions and that whatnot of that, but I guess my feeling is, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking outside the big box. Maybe that's it. That I think that the 80s and 90s we had this sort of boom of big box and big chain restaurants and so on and so forth. And I think my leanings are a little bit more toward local Main Street economies. I'm not opposed to big box type stores, but I do think that we're kind of culturally in a transition period, and I think our economy can't necessarily support that kind of thing anymore. And so I think we just need to think a little bit more locally.
All right, we'll go to Walter Steed on that.
Thank you, Lee. It's interesting that had the council not changed the big box ordinance to allow expansion, I think it was up to by existing buildings in the city, Walmart would not have come back to Moscow. Now, I'm sure there are people out there that don't like Walmart, period. There are people that never shop there. But if you look at the number of students who live at WSU and at U of I and at New St. Andrews, that is where they shop because that's where they can afford to shop. And they get a lot of value for the buck there. And it's now they've got groceries by the expansion. So I think that was a good thing. We also did away with the dark box ordinance, got rid of that. When I look at some things like the silo on the south end of Jackson Street, which may or may not qualify as a dark box, I wish maybe we had it back so we could clean things up a little bit on that end of town.
All right, that was Walter Steed. And we're coming towards the end. We'll probably have a couple, maybe 3 more questions. The phone number, once again, is 892-9200. And the next question is going to Walter Steed first. The city endorsed in a letter to the state legislature more registration requirements for gun purchasers after the Sandy Hook tragedy. Is that something the city should be lobbying the state or federal government on?
No, this is Walter again. No, I don't think so. I have a real problem with the city council being put in the position of speaking to national and international issues. I believe people have their opinion, but I don't understand why a city council should spend its time, and I would say capital, except the letter that you're talking about had no capital. It went down to Boise and went right in the garbage can. They didn't pay one bit of attention to it. We have been accused of that being a gun rights, a Second Amendment issue letter. It was not. It was a gun violence letter. It did come out in reaction to Sandy Hook. I changed the wording in it to make it read, consider the following recommendations. And there were a whole list of things that we thought that they might think about. But I said at the time of the council meeting, I didn't have any problem signing it because I didn't think it was going to do any good for anybody at all.
And that was Walter Steed, and now Rebecca Rod.
Oh, thank you. I'm not really familiar with that letter at this point, but I guess my feeling as far as gun registration is that if we're going to have guns, they ought to be registered and accounted for, and that's at least a start in trying to get a handle on this whole thing.
All right, that was Rebecca Rod, 892-9200. The next question will go to Rebecca Rod next. Idaho had a partial repeal of the personal property tax this year, and there is a movement in the legislature endorsing total repeal. How would those things impact the city of Moscow and the budget? I understand some of the tax collected does go to local governments.
Again, I don't have all the answers about things on city council that I haven't been part of. I think that has to do with personal property that's associated with small business, and I can't address that thing.
All right, we'll go to Walter Steed on that.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, personal property taxes do spin out to city and county governments, and both city and county governments were terrified when that proposal was moving through the state legislature. The good news is that they only did a partial change to that law and not a total. Moscow was in a very good position had they done a total, because we have not taken the full 3% every year over the past 10 years or so. We have about $600,000 that is in a place where we can reach back and take it as foregone taxes. And the $200,000 a year that we would have lost if they had repealed the entire personal property tax would have given us 3 years of cushion to reach back and tax, unfortunately, our Moscow citizens to recover that cost and protect the city budget.
And that was Walter Steed, 892-9200. We're going to be coming to closing statements soon. The next question will go to Walter Steed. Should the city of Moscow be planning for a possible influx in climate change refugees in future decades?
Lee, you get the prize for a question I've never ever heard or even thought of. And I'm not sure why. Why would anybody want to influx here because of climate change? The one thing, I will say one thing about climate change, why is it always bad? Is growing bananas in Newfoundland not a good thing for the Newfoundlanders? They wouldn't have to pay to import them, maybe? I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that climate change does nothing but negative things for the world and nothing positive. Now, quite possibly, there's more bad than good, but I would think there's got to be some good in there somewhere. But influx of people because of it, I'll be puzzling over that one for a while.
And we'll go to Rebecca Rod on that.
This is an interesting way to address the issue. I know I've joked. It's not really a funny joke though about us having oceanfront property here one of these days if the ocean rises very much. But I think what we have to think about in climate change, here we're not feeling a lot of change. I think, at least at this point. But I think it's something that we have to consider how resilient our community could be if there were folks coming in, extra folks, or just in our own place, thinking about how we could respond in when things start to change like that, and if we're capable of growing our own food, or just kind of think about what our resiliency is in that kind of an issue. But that's an out there one. Thanks.
Okay, well, we are concluding this second in a series of candidates forums here on Radio Free Moscow. We have Rebecca Rod and Walter Steed, both running for Moscow City Council in the studios, and they are running for 3 open seats on the Moscow City Council.